those Epiarmian notes. I decided to play Spore on the hardest difficulty to give myself a challenge, seeing as the last time I did it, the file got corrupted, and the result is over 5 hours of work. You're welcome. The main issue I had was primarily with RNG, but I'll explain that later. For now, we need a planet of choice that arrived there in near no time at all via an asteroid. Awakening as a cell, the first thing you might wonder is what's so different about it being on hard rather than normal? Well, there are a lot more giant cells and other cells that have much more health than normal, so early game is going to be brutal. Collecting the spikes was going to be invaluable, so I decided to mate right away and equip them after changing the appearance of my cell. I chose to put them at the front to make breaking cells easier if I wasn't running away. I chose a color scheme and design I was going to use for now and named my species Denaria. Was uncreative, I know. Finding food wasn't going to be as tough in comparison to when I made the last video, simply because of my spikes. However, hitboxes and being teamed on became an issue. Death was no surprise, and it would be the first of several deaths. Same issue arose after respawning, and died for the exact same reason. After growing at long last, I got the jet part and started going for another mate. I needed speed, so I just used the new part to save myself some time. Then, at the next bit, giants and poison was the next big threat. I was able to grab the cilia just fine, but my naivete got me killed again because I swam behind this coward with poison. When the game didn't actually drop me the poison, I was pretty confused, but I ended up dying again because my spikes didn't hurt this particular cell. After getting proboscis, I decided to mate to get something for a little bit more speed. The cilia part that I had collected earlier. This would just help with recovery and catching up with other cells, mainly as well as running away from giants and dying so much easier from being bounced about like a pinball. When growing, I thought electric could in theory help me, but the lack of DNA made it impossible, as well as this feeding frenzy that got me killed again. And again. You know what? No, to make it easier, I'm just gonna add a death/defeat counter because, seriously, this is insane. Finding targets to hunt was pretty annoying simply because of the sheer number of duckies, but growing up made things arguably worse. After finally finding the sweet spot for my spikes, I was having a much easier time hunting, even if there were a lot of giants. Then, this issue. Look at all of these predators! Another death was not a surprise in the slightest, as I was swarmed, but reaching the final stage made this so much harder. The fact that you can die to these tiny creatures made it that much worse. After dying again, being hunted by a giant cell, being swarmed by little babies like a pack of raptors, I was finally done with the cell stage after dying a total of 13 times. I chose the aggressive path, seeing as I thought it'd be so much easier than being neutral or a pacifist. You will see that I was so wrong so quickly. Seeing as I didn't unlock the poison, I went with a quadrupedal creature instead for speed and for a better time with aggression. I wanted to be quick on my feet to keep up with the amount of time I would be spending on the future parts of the game, and chose to keep Denaria as something that could be effective in combat but seemed more alien in appearance. When it was all done, I stepped onto land. Seeing as I had to hunt everything, I just wasted no time and went right for the killing. It was going to take a long time, and the other creatures have a lot more health for one, and they do more damage, as seen from the fact that I almost died through an alpha. No need to fear, for these guys still went extinct nonetheless. Also, another thing that's different is that these guys are much more aggressive, especially late creature stage. Therefore, I had to compensate. This time, I evolved my creature with jaws to help them with health later on. Changed the eyes to something a bit more alien, antennae, charging, and jumping feet to cover more ground. I wanted to keep the spikes for now, seeing as they just felt right to keep. Now that I was a little more powerful, I chose to hunt these slightly more aggressive species. Taking them on was easier now that I have stronger jaws. After making them go extinct, I went back to the creature creator to upgrade again. Expect this to happen a lot. I changed the antennae to make it look a bit different, changed the skeleton, and removed the last of the cell stage parts. Then I got wings, health pads which would be temporary, and spit which I was missing from the poison. Now that I was somewhat stronger, I resumed my little expedition and kept hunting. I needed more parts and DNA if I was going to be able to win this challenge. As I hunted, I finally grew a bigger brain and had room for a pack now. This was the part of the game where the difficulty spikes massively. For now, I still have some basic fodder to play with before I play with the bigger and more aggressive species. I returned after eliminating some species and evolved as one should. I was going to get better jaws, but didn't have the DNA, so I settled with different eyes and changed the position of the wings a little, just as well as stretching them. I also changed some other little things because why not, really? Thankfully, it wasn't time to migrate just yet, so I befriended a teammate to help me with hunting and flew about to the last of the weak land species. Like in the tribal stage of the last video, these guys were a joke, seeing as they had no hunting capabilities, as they were also herbivorous. These guys were also pretty simple as well, only because they don't have any other abilities other than a level 1 bite attack, so eliminating them was pretty easy in the long run. With over 100 DNA to spare, I returned to the nest ready to evolve. I grabbed some arms so I could make it an absolute weapon with having some strike, and upgraded my hooves for a better charge attack. I finalized and went back to the game, which was when a migration happened and everyone moved away. My first reaction was to hunt these weak species just as a way to get cheap DNA for the early game, but my friend was already dead, so I just went back to heal. After quickly patching myself up, I went back to hunt these species to get revenge for my deceased pack member. After avenging him, I just thought it'd be best to avoid most of these species as a whole, seeing as they'd kill me in nearly 2 seconds flat, so flying around them was safer. I somewhat kept to the path, but it was immediately hunted because, of course, it's the whole point of this game. My issue was the sheer number of hostile species because of the difficulty, and, this. Yeah, epics were also an issue. Instead of running away, I just thought it'd be safer to sneak at the nest and steal the parts before ticking it off about my presence by shooting it in the back of the neck and guiding it to the migrated nest. I unintentionally started this hunt while all of the other species around me did nothing to help, so I just ran around it like a coward while having more friends go hunt it. Hunger was also an issue, so I found a lonely species and gathered the attention of a few too many, so I backed out to try and fly away, but only had to try to keep the attention of one. After somehow managing to survive, I managed to eat and save myself at the last second. Now I had to stop the epic with my weak attacks, with my best ability being charge, which I never used the entire time. I kept flying about hoping to keep sniping it with spit and keeping my distance so I didn't die, and risk a crash seeing as I hadn't saved before now. Fortunately, it seemed to keep on getting stuck every so often as it was chasing me, but it didn't stay locked in place for very long. I had to rely on my teammates to resume doing the work, so I kept on being distant. After about 45 minutes of trying to take him down and hunting another creature to avoid starving, I finally got the Colossus to fall. I didn't get a lot of DNA from that hunt, but I had enough for some upgrades at the very least. I went with better jaws, different eyes, and better claws. I also changed the bone structure a little bit to make it really feel like my creature was evolving every step of the way. I united my pack and resumed hunting the creatures I was killing earlier for food when taking out the epic, just for some cheap DNA. After finishing them off, I had a meteor shower start, so I sat by and let the rocks fall. I then just decided to hunt this species for even slightly thinking that they could be friendly with me. Sure, taking them on took a while, but at least I knew pathways that I could go down should I continue hunting. And continue hunting I did. In fact, by the time I chose to return to the nest, I had almost 200 DNA points to use, so I called for a mate and entered the creature creator yet again. The changes I really made was just the spit, which was kind of inevitable seeing as I used it so frequently, as well as the wings for some better flight time. I was able to grow a bigger brain after finishing off a species and resumed my little trip, finishing off these species as well. I was in the home stretch before the second most painful part of this entire challenge, so I was going to make use of this freedom as much as I could. After getting a bit more DNA, I returned home, went to mate, which was almost interrupted by these creatures who were about to hunt me, which I found pretty funny actually. After some careful consideration, I went for the speed and charge buff with the feat, only because I knew that buffing my attack power was going to be useful for the upcoming tribal stage. I also did some slight redesigning to make it look a bit better after thinking about how I was going to resume this. The final migration happened while I was still being hunted by these species from earlier. I waited until I was about to be hunted, then fought back before he could do anything, and I took absolutely no damage at all. I befriended my teammate who stayed behind for me, then went to follow the migration. My only worry was all the aggressive species around, but eventually I was able to mostly avoid them and arrived at the nest near water, giving me the same perks as the last video. Now for the other thing about hard mode. Rogues are not neutral with you. In fact, they are annoyed or hostile. I led this one to us at the nest and stunned it as it charged, and backed away as it was weakening me, seeing his health was a bit of an issue, and I got sniped from the back of the head. I wasn't gonna let it run away though, so I got its attention again and kept going at it as much as I could. Every time it charged, Spit cancelled and stunned it, giving me a lot of needed time. And after a lot less time than it did with the epic, we brought it down to its knees, giving us a lot of DNA. Going into the creature creator, I just went with a buff for my strike and wings for some travel. With my stats all ready to go, it was time for the finale of the stage. Before I could befriend anyone for my pack, I saw the Astro Wing that I made in my practice and had to wait for it to leave before I could even gather anyone. After 5 minutes of waiting, it finally left and I was able to befriend my pack and go back to finishing the stage. All I needed to do was cause extinction to a few more species, and once that was done, I finally drew this to a close and went through one last evolution before the next stage, leading up to a total of 14 deaths. This part of the game was annoying, so I'll give the details straight up. First off, more common species are not as social with you, so befriending them is a risk. Secondly, food is almost invaluable at this point in the game, so use and farm for it wisely. Finally, every single tribe has a disliking to you, and you are more likely to be swarmed if you are not prepared. Also, did I forget to mention the 2 epics that are flying about? Yeah, those 2 are also going to be an obstacle, at least for me. The first strategy I tried was my very common strategy. Have 1 member fishing, have 1 sit behind to get eggs and protect the babies, and have everyone else swarm at least one of the villages. I did, however, try to find very specific creatures to protect me, but ran into this problem. I spent way too much time trying to look for them, and other tribes formed just as I was taking out the first village. After I did, I was overwhelmed by both the pink and cyan tribes, leading to my first defeat on the stage. I mean, ever, by the way. My second attempt was me being as aggressive as possible, keeping 1 away to fish while the rest of them was just destroying the village. I ran into the same overwhelming defeat when I was just totally swarmed and eliminated once again. After a break, I returned back to the game with a better plan. Stockpile some food to give as gifts to buy me time as I swarm other villages. To do this, I befriended some tanky creatures, had 1 member do some fishing, then swarmed and overwhelmed the other villages. The first one went down without any issues, but the other 3 were not going to be as easy. After spending some food to make the gifts, I went to the other villages that were going to raid us and gave my offering. They amazingly accepted my generous offer, and I was able to buy myself all the time I needed to attack the next village. It took near to no time at all after a while, even if I suffered a really glitchy defeat, seeing as this defeat is only supposed to happen when I have no members alive, when I clearly had my fishermen still. I managed to finally finish after a lot of planning my attacks and even defeating a Scarlet Striker epic for a lot more food, which I would have used throughout the rest of the stage, thus leading me to the most painful part of this entire challenge: the modern stage. I designed a new building and tank which was designed to be aggressive rather than defensive, and ultimately, this would be more of a blessing in disguise, and you'll see why. First off, the main issue arises when cities formed faster than my brain trying to collapse in of itself when it comes to motivation. The second one is that a fair few of them thought less of me because of me being a military nation. In near to no time at all, the Orange Nation had already declared war on me, and I was left overwhelmed even as the Red Nation tried to help me, so I suffered another defeat. Then, I thought the Alliance strategy would work as it did last time. I let them take over absolutely everything, but one attempt didn't work seeing as they saw me as a threat thanks to my captured city, and the second attempt didn't work because the nation itself was much too big. I spent a long time planning out an invasion using a previous save, seeing as I didn't save after allying with the Red Nation, causing a soft lock, and eventually came up with a plan. After the Red Nation helps destroy the Orange Nation, I would invade and betray the alliance with the Red Nation after stocking up as much money as I could with the happiness and factories in my cities that I had taken over. Planning out where I was going to strike was harsh, but after a long time of going back and forth against their dozens of planes, I finally managed to capture the continent before they overwhelmed me again. I discovered planes and started using the nukes to take over cities early for a very strong edge, and after some time I was able to finally whittle down the numbers, giving myself the advantage I needed to swarm and finish this. When I had them pinned, they finally surrendered the world to us, leading to our total victory. I constructed the Astro Wing and finally took off, flying right to the stars and ending this 5-hour endeavor. Videos like this take a very long time to script and edit if it wasn't clear, but I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I had fun playing. If you want to show your support and do in fact want to see more of this, consider subscribing and sharing it with someone else, as it always helps me a whole bunch. With that, I now draw this video to a close. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen.